Hello, everybody. Welcome to this online presentation, which is all about the future of work. And look, I want to make this interactive, so I want to give you a chance to, in the next 45 minutes, I'm going to share some ideas around the future of work. And I'd love to have your input as well in what you think is happening with the future of work for you and what you're interested in doing. I know that, initially, thanks to Venture UWA, we're putting on this presentation, but I know that we've expanded and sent out invitations to people in lots of different places. So there's a variety of people who are here. So when we talk about the future of work, we'll look at it in different areas because you might have different things that you're interested in. Okay, so my rules of engagement for all my online presentations are these three. So first of all, I want to give you some things to think about in this session. So do what you can to eliminate any other interruptions, distractions, make the most of your time in the 45 minutes that we've got together. And the second part of that is, can I encourage you in this session to think big, maybe even a little bit bigger than you would think would be practical or realistic for you, because it's easier to think big and then step it back later when life and studies and everything else gets in the way, than to think small and then try to expand your thinking bigger later. Be playful. So there's plenty of time for you to ask me questions here, and I'll also ask you questions as we go. So jump in, take part. So if you're here live, you'll get the most value from this. By the way, we are recording this as well. So everybody who's registered, you'll get a copy of the recording later as well. But while you're here live, make the most of the chance to interact and with me, and also with it'll help the other people in the room as well. I want to give you some things. I want to, at the end of this presentation, that you'll have some things that you can take away and put into place. I want to make this really practical. So anything that you think is too theoretical, you're not sure how to apply it for you in your life right now, then feel free to ask me. So type your questions in the chat box, and I'll answer as many of them as I can, because I really want to give you some things to think about. Okay, so let's make the most of this. In fact, let's start off now with one of those pieces of engagement. So I've got a question for you here, and we'll do it this way. So I'm going to ask you a question, and there's a bit of a puzzle that goes along with this question. So I'm going to ask you the puzzle, and then type in the chat your answer to the puzzle. It's just a number that you type in. Okay, so when you think you know the answer, type the answer into the chat, and we'll see what the responses are coming up on the screen here. Okay, so here's a question. It's not you won't know the answer just yet, but the question is this: what is the number of the occupied parking space? Okay, now you don't know what that means, but let me explain what that means. So here's a car park, and you can see that the car park, the bays in the car park are numbered according to a specific pattern. So what I'd like to know is what's the pattern, but actually what I'd really like to know, and you can, if you know the pattern, you can see that one of the cars is covering up one of the numbers, and what's the number that's been covered up. And if you know the pattern, then you'll know the number that's been covered up. Okay, I can see some people have already responded. Okay, 87 is the first answer that's come through. It's the only answer so far. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to give you a few more seconds to see if anyone's got a different answer from that. Okay, so thank you to the people who've answered. That is correct. So the answer is 87. And for people who want a little bit more, want a little bit of a hint, let me give you a hint here on how to get the answer. Okay, so now it's pretty obvious, right? So 87. But it's not always obvious. It wasn't obvious necessarily when you saw the, oops, let me go back a bit. When you saw the picture like this. Okay, and so I'm doing this for two reasons. So one is I'm obviously it's a nice little fun puzzle, but also I really want to make the point today that sometimes all it takes is a different perspective and solutions and answers pop out. Okay, so some of the things that we're going to talk about today about the future of work, you might think, I already know this, I already know this, but think about whether this gives you a different perspective, because sometimes that's all you need, a different perspective on something that you already know. And in particular, when I was talking to Chloe and the rest of the team in preparing for this, one of the things they said is there's going to be people who here who are students who want to go into employment. There are students who want to be innovators and entrepreneurs. There are other people who've got different goals from this. So every person is going to get a different outcome from this session. And I'd like you to think about what you're going to get from the content that's presented. And also feel free to ask me questions that are relevant to you and what outcome you'd like to get. Okay, so let's talk about the future of work. If we're looking at work, and I talk to lots of leaders about the future of work, and it's a big conversation, and people mean different things by it. So here are the four elements broadly about the future of work, and we're going to touch on each of them in the session. And I want this to be driven by you. So the first one is the idea that you want to, the four A's. Okay, so the first one is assess. So you understand the work that's coming up in the work that needs to be done. It also means understanding how the world has changed, and there may be different work in the future than the work that you're doing right now, or the work that organizations have done in the past. So that's the first bit, which is understanding what work needs to be done. The second A is augmenting. It's about combining humans and machines. So if it's physical work, it's humans and maybe robots. If it's knowledge work, which a lot of people are doing now, it's humans and AI. The third area is this idea of accommodating different working options. So, and many organizations, I can tell you now, are really struggling with this because pre-COVID, and I'm going to use a C word here, pre-COVID, there was one mainstream way to do work. You go to work in an office, Monday to Friday, roughly 9 to 5, and the team that you work with are the people who happen to be within commute distance of that same office. And generally it's the same team that does the work. But now, and COVID proved it, now there are lots of different working options, and lots of employees are expecting their employers to give them more flexibility to accommodate the kind of work style that they want, rather than the one standard style that the employee provided, that the employer provided. However, it's not always easy to do that. Many organizations are really struggling with this right now. They're also struggling with this last bit, which is how do we attract the best team, the best people into our team? So how do we create a culture where we're finding, nurturing, and keeping the best people? Now, if you're looking for, if you're a potential employee, then you might say, I'm the best person for this role. And then you're positioning yourself with an employer, but it's also looking at what is it that employers are looking for. So we're going to look at these four areas briefly. And I've picked an area in each of these four. So we're looking at assessing, which is looking at the future. We're looking at augmenting. We won't spend much time talking about AI here, but I want to talk about the human qualities and the human skills that employers in particular are looking for so that people can work with AI and work with each other. And the third area is accommodating flexibility and what that means. And one of the key things that you should keep in mind when you think about flexibility. And the last one is, how do we build this culture? How do you, employees are looking to attract the best people. How do you position yourself as the best person, whether you're going in as an employee or whether you're an innovator or an entrepreneur, trying to work with clients. Okay, so those are the four things broadly that we're going to talk about. But before we do that, I want to ask you, what does the future of work mean for you? So if you can type in the chat just one or two words, what does when I say the future of work, what does that mean for you? Just type in a word or two. There's no wrong answers here. So just type in what you think when I say the future of work. What does it mean? Okay, Cherie says change, innovation, adaptability. Good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing that. So it's really interesting, isn't it? And remember, I said at the start that there are a lot of people talking about this future of work, and it goes into different areas. And it's really interesting that there are some comments here, like security is one. And I'm not sure whether that means security in terms of security of work, or whether we're talking about things like cybersecurity, or whether it means security of careers. But look at the range of options. We're talking about things like there's a lot of uncertainty. We need to be adaptable. There's going to be a lot of change in the future. And that idea of work from anywhere, which falls into that accommodate category. What else have we got there? The 4-day work week, which is all about accommodate, reliance on AI, which is about this augment area. Um, good, good. Okay, so I'll keep that in mind for as we go through. And as I said, as we're going through this session, feel free to ask me questions in each area. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go through each of those 4 areas, and I'm going to pick one idea from each of those 4 areas. And the idea I'm going to pick is an idea that I know that there are employers and not even employers, organizations, whether they're businesses, companies, or government sector organizations, or for-purpose organizations like not-for-profits. And I know that these are issues that they're grappling with, that they ask me for help with. So if I share that with you, it'll help you understand also what organizations are looking for now when they're talking about the future of work. So let's look at this first one. So it's understanding the work that needs to be done. And I want to focus on one really specific thing here, because the work that's going to be required in the future keeps changing, because our world keeps changing. And sometimes clients say to me, they say, Gihan, you're a futurist. Tell me what work we need to be prepared for in the future. And some of it's really obvious. Some of it's saying, oh, well, AI, because it's already here. But there are other things that are not so obvious. And so I say, look, I don't know, and nobody knows exactly what the future is going to look like. So the question is, and then they say to me, so what do we need to do to make sure that we're still relevant in the future? And the real answer to that, and this the number one thing that I say to clients, what you need to do is understand what problems you're solving for your customers and clients. That's it. Okay. Understand what problems you're solving, and then figure out a way to solve those problems. And it's true for you as well. If you're an innovator or an entrepreneur, you start by saying, what problem can I solve for somebody? You don't start by saying, I've built this great app. Now, who's going to buy it? The app has to solve a problem for somebody. In the same way, if you're looking to be employed, then you've got some qualifications, but what problem does that solve for your future employer? And also be aware that problems have changed now, and the problems you're solving, the goals that you're trying to achieve have changed. So I'm going to give you some examples here of some innovations, and I'm going to ask you, what problems do they solve? Okay, so these are real innovations. These are happening in the world right now. I'm talking to clients in their sectors, some around healthcare, some around other areas. And I'm going to ask you, just as an exercise, what problem do each of these innovations solve? Okay, let's see how we go. Okay, so AI nurses. So this is something new. NVIDIA, the big global chip company, one of the most valuable companies on the planet now, they have launched this thing called AI nurses. And the way this works is that if you're a patient and you have to deal with a nurse in some way, then you've got these AI nurses. These are not robots. This is on an iPad or a tablet where you can ask questions and you can have a back and forth conversation, but not with a human nurse, with an AI nurse. And it doesn't provide medical advice, because that's left to the humans to do, but it provides the routine non-medical advice. Okay, so if you think about that from the patient's viewpoint, what problem is this solving? Get help from home, less wait time, limited mobility, accessibility. Let me just share a couple of the things that people are saying. Convenience. Okay, let me ask you from the employer's viewpoint. If you are a healthcare organization, then what problem does this solve for that employer? Yep, resources, staffing, less so I'm just highlighting Stephanie's one here. So it's less cost to provide that and put nurses to work in places they need to be. Okay, so it's not taking away their expertise, but it's reducing some of the costs of the the more routine things, which you'd rather not pay somebody to do that when they should be doing things which are higher skill. Okay, increased scale of service, increased revenue. Yep. Okay, good. Okay, good. So we're going to keep going with this. Okay, I'll give you a couple more examples. Um, Here's an example that's being used in a new a startup company, and there's a few of these. I picked one of these here. What they will do is they will verify the green, the sustainability, climate change, circular economy claims of products of retailers, and they have an app where if you're a customer, you can go and check the sustainability credentials of companies before you decide to buy their products, because of course we know many people care about the sustainability and the ESG, so environmental, sustainable, and governance credentials of companies and organizations they work with. What problem does this solve for the company? Okay, so this is a company that wants to be listed with this app. What problem does this solve for that company? Right. Okay. It's another place where they can market, they can promote. They're positioned there, and they're positioned because they're positioned in a place where customers and consumers who are looking for organizations with green credentials can find them. Good. Yep. So it's actually verified credentials, which is really valuable as well, rather than greenwashing. Yep. Proving their credentials. Let's definitely just use the word greenwashing there. Yes. Customer retention. Reputation. Good. Okay. Let me give you another one. Here's a personal one. Here's a slightly personal one. So here's one. You can see this is a picture of my face. It's in fact a 3D avatar of my face, or half my face, as you'll see here, half my head. Oops, I went too far. Let me get back to this one. Okay, so I got this done almost 10 years ago. I went to a conference where I was speaking as a presenter at the conference, and then I had some time afterwards, and I went to the exhibition center where they had all these companies who had they were showing off their products for people attending the conference. And one of them was this company, in a small company, just a one-person company in Melbourne, and he had this studio which had like 80 cameras, where you go into the studio, you go into the booth, and these 80 cameras that from different angles take a photograph of you. And then he had it was AI, a much earlier version of AI than we have now. AI would create a 3D model of you. Now he had it, so it is a full body 3D model. In the exhibition at the conference, he didn't have his full setup, but just to demonstrate how it was done, he had these 5 cameras, and you could get your face. So you could get a 3D model of your face, which is what I did. And then 2 days later, he emailed me this 3D animation of my face. Okay, so before I show you an example of how that could solve a problem, imagine that you could get a 3D virtual model of yourself. What problems could this solve? So who could you pitch that idea to? Who could you present that idea to, thinking about solving a problem? So be creative here. Okay, so just think of some ideas in chat. So Stephanie says, yeah, glasses on faces. So online optometrists, yep. Security. And Laura says, picture outfits before you put them on or buy them. Online shopping, customized outfits, hairstylists. Great, excellent. Okay, so in fact, all of those things are potential uses of it, right? Okay, so James says, for surgeries, you do 3D avatars. In fact, that's an example that is happening at the moment, James, where surgeons are creating 3D models of patients, and they're using a combination of virtual reality and augmented reality to do the surgery, a practice surgery on this 3D model, digital model, before they do the surgery on the real patient. Okay, so they kind of do a trial run, a practice run to see if there's any problems before they use it for a real patient. Samuel says assessing posture. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so one way, and all of these are real, right? So these are all of these answers are realistic answers. So one way it's being used is already been mentioned for online shopping. So this company called FitMatch now has exactly this technology, and what they do is they can you can go into a FitMatch booth, and within a second now they will do this 3D model. And then you can upload it to online retailers who use this technology, who support this technology, so that it does, and you can do it at different levels. So level one is where it just simply reduces the catalog to only the things that fit your style and body shape. Level two is where you could actually do a virtual try on. So you can see what it looks like. You can choose something from the catalog and see what it looks like on you. And obviously the model can turn around in 3D. You don't get to try it on yourself until it arrives, but at least you can see what it looks like. And level three, you could imagine also, I haven't seen anybody doing this, but you could imagine in the future, you'd also be able to upload all the clothes you've got in your own wardrobe already, 3D versions of those, so that then when you choose something from the online store, you could see how it matches with the jacket you've already got or with the other clothes that you're wearing. Okay, and then, oh, I see a question from Stephanie here. So next step is to then make customized clothing with exact measurements. Yeah, so if you're getting clothing tailored, then you can get it done remotely without you having to turn up. Okay, so these are just some examples I wanted to show you of the importance of any time your any idea that you've got or your expertise that you've got, always ask the question, what problem are you solving? It may sound really obvious, but it's one of the biggest challenges that organizations are facing now. And this is for the organization, not just for their employees, but for the organization. One of the biggest problems that they're facing is that the world is changing so fast that the problems that they were used to solving and they were really good at solving have changed because the world has changed, not because they were doing anything wrong, but what they were doing was good in the past. It's not so relevant in the future. So keep this in mind. And it doesn't matter what level you're, on what level and what role you have in an organization. Think about what problem are we solving for our ultimate customers, our clients. Okay? And if you're an innovator, when you go to talk to potential customers, keep in mind the problem that you're solving, not only the solution that you're providing. Okay, so that's the first area about solving problems. Any questions about that? I know people have been quite engaged in the chat in answering my questions, but any questions about solving problems for customers and employers as well? Okay, I'll keep going because there'll be other opportunities for you to ask me questions as well. This area here is this idea about our future is going to be much more about humans and technology working together, whether it's AI or machines or even like us here right now, we are humans and machine and technology working together to be able to collaborate and work together in this presentation. And we're going to have a lot more of that. So I don't want to talk about the technology today. I want to talk about the human side of it. And I'm going to ask you, or I'm going to share with you this work by Howard Gardner, where he talks about 5 minds or 5 mindsets for the future. So I think you all know that the skills we're going to need for the future are very different from the skills that people needed in the past, even in the recent past. Even the skills that you needed 5 years ago have changed now. Okay, some of them obviously are the same, but many of them have changed. So Howard Gardner, he talks about the 5 minds or 5 mindsets for the future. So I'm going to go through them and ask you for yourself privately, do a little assessment for yourself, assess how strong you are in each of these five mindsets. Give yourself a rating from 1 to 5. 1 means I'm really weak in this. This is not one of my strengths. 5 means I'm really strong in it. This is one of my strengths. The goal is not that you want to get 5 out of 5 in each of them. If you do think that you're 5 out of 5 in each of them, maybe you think a bit too much of yourself. The goal is to figure out your strengths and your weaknesses. You want to know your strengths because these are the areas where you want to apply those strengths more and more. You want to know your weaknesses for 2 reasons. One is you may want to build them up and say, oh, I'm weak in this area, but I'd like to be stronger. But the other reason is because you want to also work in a team of other people who've got them as strengths. So you don't have to be strong in all 5 areas as long as you've got a team that covers all these 5 strengths. Okay, so let's go through each of these 5 mindsets. So the first one is what Gardner calls a disciplined mindset. So I don't like this term. Disciplined sounds like you need to be focused and determined, not going to get distracted. That's not what he means. What he means is that you've got some expertise and some qualifications in some area of discipline. So if you're currently a student, you're studying in this discipline right now. And the disciplined mindset is the learner's mindset. It's the one that's saying, I always need to be continually learning and upgrading my experience and expertise in this discipline. Okay, so it means even after you finish formal studies, that you're always learning. It means that you're sometimes unlearning things that used to be true, but aren't true anymore. Okay, so give yourself a rating from 1 to 5. Just do this privately. I'm not asking anyone to share. The second one is a connector mindset. The connector, this is one of my strengths, by the way. The connector is somebody who sees things from outside their area of discipline or outside their normal day-to-day life and figures out how they could be relevant to you. This is one of my strengths because I work with lots of industries, lots of organizations, and I see something in real estate and I say, oh, that could be really useful for universities. Or I see something in healthcare and I say that would be really, that idea could also really work in the insurance industry. So it's connecting ideas from outside. So it's part of being creative. Give yourself a rating. And the third one, Gardner actually calls this a creative mindset. So this is the mindset where the people who just seem to create ideas out of nowhere. This is not one of my strengths, but I love hanging out with these people for 2 reasons. One is I really admire and respect what they do. But the second reason is when they come up with an idea, I can think of 3 or 4 or 5 other ways that could be applied in different industries because I'm strong as a connector. Okay, so that's why you don't need to be strong in all of them as long as you surround yourself with people who've got those strengths. The fourth one is what Gardner calls a respectful mindset. So these are the people. These are the people who are always thinking about other people around them. What impact is this going to have on other people, even people right now in our team? If you're collaborating on a project, are we making sure that we've organized the teams effectively? If somebody is in a meeting and somebody doesn't speak up, somebody with a respectful mindset might go, oh, we haven't heard much from you recently, or might say, not say anything then, but after the meeting would go up to them and say, you didn't say much, I'd like to know your opinion. They're always thinking about people. And the last one is the big picture, the ethical mindset. So they're always thinking about the bigger than themselves. So what does this mean for our planet? What does this mean for our grandchildren and their grandchildren? What does this mean for future generations? What does this mean even within an organization? What does this mean? Like our organization has these values that we say that we live by and operate by, but is what we're doing consistent with those values? So that's the ethical mindset. Okay, again, I'm not going to ask you to share your results, but I will ask if anyone has any questions about any of those 5 mindsets. I'll also say that after this presentation, when we send out the recording, I'll also send you a link to I have an online version of this 5 Minds for the Future on my website. It's free, it takes about 5 minutes to do. So if you'd like to do a more detailed version than the 5-minute version that we've just done here, we'll send you a link to that as well. as well when we send out the recording. Okay, just checking any other questions or any questions? Okay, let's continue. So this next one is one that a lot of people are interested in. As I said, employers are really struggling with this at the moment. But how do they accommodate flexible working options for their staff? It really is a big problem because prior to COVID, there were a lot of employees, especially young employees. I know there are a lot of them here in this room now. Younger employees were saying, "We want to have more flexibility. Why do we need to come into an office? We do lots of stuff on our devices, and we can do things remotely. We're used to." Um, engaging with our friends on social media as well as meeting them in person. Why do we need to come into an office? We really want more, we want you to accommodate more flexibility. And the bosses, the employers were saying, yeah, that's really good. We hear you. We'll get around to it when it comes into our priority list. And then suddenly there was this global pandemic and everyone had to scramble to figure out how that was going to work. And especially for office work, um, within weeks, there were employers and companies and businesses and other organizations who had said, this is all too hard, who were forced to find ways to make work when people were literally in isolation in their homes and they had to be able to work remotely. And now, of course, a lot of that has relaxed now, but because of what we went through as a result of COVID, and employers, two things happened for employers. One is they realized that it is possible to make it happen. Like they realized that the technology and all of the infrastructure that was required and that security was possible because they were forced to do it because of a global pandemic. But two, they also realized that the way that they used to be lead and manage in the past didn't necessarily fit with this idea of flexible work and accommodating different work styles. Because there are many leaders and managers who, not even deliberately, not intentionally, the way they lead and manage is by observing people in the office. So they notice when people come in late in the morning, or they notice when they leave early, or they notice the people who have a long lunch break. And they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be measuring and assessing people on that. What they should be measuring and assessing is on the work that they produce and the output of the work. So you'd agree with that, right? Like that seems pretty obvious. But many people, many leaders and managers didn't know how to lead and manage based on people's output. All they knew was we see these people in the office. If I have a question, I can walk over to them and ask them the question. Why did they leave early today? Why are they not back from lunch yet? Why are they not in this meeting? So that's the way they used to judge people. And so that style has changed a lot. So even the leaders and managers who say we want to offer more flexible work options, they feel really uncomfortable about it because they don't know how to do that, because in the past they've never had to do that. So I reckon, so when I speak to leaders and managers, I tell them the way that you used to lead in the past, you may need to change that. The way that you used to manage, you may need to change it. When I speak to employees about the future and talk about what you should do when you're looking for a job and the sort of ways to position yourself, either when you're looking for a job or you're in a job and you want more flexibility, how do you make it work? What I say to them, which is what I'm saying to you now, is take on some responsibility for helping your employer helping your boss through this difficult time in their lives. Okay, because understand that even if they're on board with the idea that they, you know, want to be more flexible and give you more flexible working options because they want to keep you and they want to get the best people, it's not easy for them. Okay, so I'm going to show you one thing that you can do around this. And this is based on some research that was done by Google. This is pre-COVID, but they looked at what makes a high-performing team. And in Google, they measure everything. So they did this almost like a scientific experiment. And they thought the best performing teams are the ones with the smartest people, the best engineers, the ones who have kept up their knowledge, and the absolute top level people, which Google, of course, has enough money to be able to recruit those people. So they ran this thing called Project Aristotle, because Aristotle, Greek philosopher, and one of the things he said is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So this was their scientific experiment called Project Aristotle. And they came up with, to their surprise, they found that the high performing teams are not the ones with the smartest people, the brightest young innovators, the ones with the best brains for doing the technical work. They came up with 5 things. I'm not going to go through all those 5 things here because, as I said, I'm only going to pick one in each of these 4 areas. So I'm going to pick one of them. You can look up Project Aristotle on Google if you're interested in the other 4. I do recommend that you look it up because it'll be useful for you, especially if you're early in your career, to understand what makes a high performance team, because it's got nothing to do with your technical expertise. It's got nothing to do with your qualifications. It's got nothing to do with whether you've got a bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, or no degree at all. Okay, so look up those 5. I'll leave you to do that separately. But the one I want to look at here, which applies and is really relevant for flexible work and being this area of the future of work of accommodate, is dependability. So one of the things in a high performance team is that people know that they can depend on other people in their team. Okay, so actually, let me just ask you, what does dependability mean to you? What do you think that means? Trust. Yep. James says trust. What else? Reliability. Yep. Sherry says they will do what they say we will. Start and finish. You give someone a task and they will complete it well. Okay, I'm going to pick one of these and I'm going to drill down on it. Okay, so there's some very simple, similar ones. Okay, so members of keep promises. Okay, let me pick this one from Stephanie. So you give someone a task and you know that they will complete it well. Yeah, they're dependable, right? They're reliable. You know that they'll provide quality work, those sort of things, right? Which is what Stephanie's saying here. Now, think about this from the viewpoint of accommodating flexible work. So before this flexible work, if you're in an office, your boss would give you a task and they'd say, please do this task, Stephanie, and then you go back to them when it's done. But there are some other parameters around that. So one is, when is it due? Like, when do they need to do it? So it's not only that you complete it well, but you complete it well by a certain deadline. Another one is, what happens if I get stuck doing the task? Then what you do is you go and talk to your boss and get some help. Now, all of those things, they might sound obvious, but when you're talking about flexible work, that becomes more difficult. It becomes a little bit more challenging. So if I'm your boss and I give you a task and I say I need it done by 2 o'clock today, if it's 2:05 and you haven't done the task and I haven't heard from you, that's a negative to your dependability. Now, if we were in an office, it's different because I might see that you're still stuck in a meeting at 2 o'clock. So you haven't got back to me because I can see you there. Or we might have had some chats in the few hours that we've had before 2 o'clock about the task, and you say, "Oh, I can't do it by 2, but can I do it by the end of the day?" But in a where you've got these flexible working options where you're working remotely, it's not as easy and it's not as obvious. What happens if you get stuck on a task? Again, if you're in office, you walk over and you get some help if you need the help. But in a remote environment, if you're working remotely, you need some rules. That if I get stuck, do I need to stop and come back to you? Or should I go ahead anyway and do something and then ask for your input? How often do we need to meet and check in? So if it's only a few hours away, that's fine. But if it's 3 days, if the task is 3 days, do we need to check in between? So we need to set up these rules. And can I tell you, that many managers and leaders have never thought about that before when they're working in a hybrid environment or remote environment. They just do things the way they've always done in an office, and they don't realize that there are problems with this. So for you, in your early career, when you're looking at being dependable, it might be up to you to set some of these rules, to say to your manager, right, you want me to do this task by Friday, fine. Um, do you want me to check in at tomorrow and show you where I'm up to? Um, if I get stuck, what do I need to do? Do I need to talk to you? Do I need to go ahead and send you a draft? Do I need to just go ahead anyway because you trust me, because it's similar to this other task you've done? Do I need to look up this procedure? Again, you think these are sort of things that your leaders and managers should be telling you, but many of them have never done it before because this whole idea of remote work or hybrid work is new to them. So for you, when you're thinking about the future of work for yourself, you can help yourself by helping your boss. Okay, any questions about that before we get into the last one? So our timing's going really well. So we're pretty much right on time. Okay, so things like, and I noticed people commented here with things like trust and reliability and synergy with others, and all of this is right. But think about what it means in a really, really, really practical way. So trust is, am I trusting that you'll finish the work on time? Yes. But what if I can't? What if you can't? What does that mean in a really practical way? Okay, let's look at this last area here. And I've got one very simple thing here, again, something that came out of COVID about attracting, so for employers and for organizations, they can tell you there is a war for talent at the moment. What that means is that employers are fighting over each other, falling over themselves, falling over each other, fighting with each other, trying to attract and find, nurture, and keep the best people. Now, that's good for you if you are one of those best people. So what does that mean for you? And I hope you've got some ideas already from what we've talked about. So if I summarize, one thing is that you're always looking at what problem are we solving? That's really attractive to any employee, any manager, any leader. You're also looking at what skills do I have, what mindsets do I have, and how do I make sure I'm getting access to all these other mindsets in our team. And the third thing is how do I demonstrate that I'm dependable? Okay? And what do I need to do to coach my manager and leader about being dependable? All those things will help. And this last one is related to them. So if you want to be part of a high performing culture and you want to be seen as somebody who is going to be valued in that high performance culture, then here's something that you should do. And by the way, this applies to you whether you're looking for employment or whether you're in employment and you're looking at the team and where you want to go within the team, or whether you're an innovator or entrepreneur talking to customers or clients about working with them. Is this concept called the avocado leader. So I love the idea. It came up, it was created, this term, the avocado leader, came up early in COVID. So early during the pandemic, in around June or July 2020, Macquarie University, they did some research to look at what are the best organizations doing and what are the best leaders doing to lead their teams through this global crisis. And they came up with this term, the avocado leader. And the avocado leader, they said, the best leaders are like avocados. So they have a hard inner core, which is still looking at what does the organization need to do? What do we need to do for the business? What do we need to do for our customers? Making sure we can still achieve those goals. But they've also got this soft outer layer, which is looking after their people, especially in a crisis. So the best leaders have empathy, they exercise good judgment, they make sure that the people get the help that they need when they're going through mental health issues, which happened a lot during COVID. Now, the best leaders have always been avocado leaders, but in any time of uncertainty and change, everybody is being asked to step up and be an avocado leader. Now, you don't have to be You don't have to have the word leader on your business card. You don't need to be a leader or a manager. Everybody is being asked to step up to be an avocado leader. Don't worry, your employers, they're not going to say we want avocado leader in their job ads. They're not going to say that in their teams. They're not going to say, oh, who are the avocado leaders in meetings? They don't know this phrase. I can tell you that this is what they're looking for. They're looking for people who've got the technical skills and also have got that outlook to say we need to meet some business goals, but they're also looking at people who've got this, who've got people skills. And it's really, really important, more so now than ever before. Okay, so we've talked about those 5 things. Sorry, those 4 things around the future of work. So if I go back to that, so we looked at assessing, which is about looking after your customers. We talked about the 5 mindsets for the future. We talked about what you can do around dependability to accommodate more flexible working options, because you want it, but you need to help your bosses, your managers, and other leaders in the organization to be comfortable to allow it. And we talked about this idea of being an avocado leader to be attractive for the sort of people that leaders and managers are looking for. Before we finish, I love this quotation by Benjamin Brewster from the 1800s. So he says, in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice, but in practice there is. And can I encourage you that if you've got some ideas from today's session, think about a way that you could put them into practice sooner rather than later. So one of the clients I loved working with the best, Dr. Nikki Howe. She's retired now, but she was the head of an aged care facility here in Perth. And we were doing some leadership coaching and mentoring. And one of the things I loved about the way that Nikki worked was when any idea that we spoke about in our leadership or coaching sessions, she took lots of notes, which is good. But almost always within a day or two, she'd come back to me and say, hey, Gihan, I tried this. Here's what I found. Okay. She took the theory or the idea and put it into practice straight away. And can I strongly encourage you to do that? Whatever you're studying, figure out a way to put it into practice straight away. Whatever you hear, whatever you learn, figure out ways to put it into practice. And also, don't wait. Don't wait for things to be perfect. Don't wait for semester break. Don't wait for time when you're not as busy. Start before you're ready, because the world won't wait for you. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming along. If you want to get in touch with me, feel free to reach out. You can find all my contact details at gihanpereira.com. As I said, we're recording this, and we'll send the recording to everybody who registers as well as a link for you to do that online 5 Minds for the Future assessment. Thanks for coming. Hope you got value from it, and I really hope that you take their value and put it into practice as soon as possible. Have a great day. I'll see you in the future.